Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
And Nicole, thank you so much. I'm hoping that everyone can see this. Nicole, you'll give me the head nod that you can see my presentation. Fantastic. And thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited about this conversation and sharing a little bit of hopefully valuable content, and would love to make sure that we've got that engagement throughout the session, because that's what's really going to make the magic happen. So our session for today is turning chaos into opportunity, specifically staffing strategies for associations in what is absolutely a interesting and always shifting labor market. So a little bit about me. I have worked in staffing and recruiting, both in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia market, as well as nationally for the past 20 years. And I've said for a long time, if you stay in staffing and recruiting over 18 months, you're in it for life. My proximity to this area has allowed me to work with a lot of associations, from AARP to ABA to IDSA, with a really large client portfolio of a variety of associations. So whether it's memberships, trade, certification, education, or hybrid associations, they've all, I've been able to work with all those various types. And I've been really, really lucky over my 20 years to work with some fantastic niche agencies. I've spent the majority of my time with agencies that focus on the marketing communications space. But now, in September, I joined Flex Professionals, and I'll share a little bit with you, more with you about them in our next slide. But I joined them in September, and am really excited to share their mission with as many people as I can. So let me get to a little bit about Flex. Really, at the highest level, Flex, since 2010, has been working with our clients to provide flexible work options to both companies, associations, nonprofits, and for-profit companies, and experienced professionals who value flexibility in their work and in their organization. Companies, particularly, who see it right now as a competitive advantage, as we see a lot of folks, a lot of companies returning to office mandates, those kind of kicking up and kicking in. We work with professionals typically that have more than 10 years of experience, so highly experienced professionals in every area of business function: operations, finance, accounting, membership, HR, marketing, comms, administration. If it is a business function that supports the growth of your association, those are the types of folks that we place and that we represent. And our particular specialization is full-time, remote, and hybrid roles, part-time, fractional, and project-based. And we just came out yesterday with what we call our Flex 100, which looks at the past year of our work. And this past year, over 75% of the jobs that we placed were actually in that part-time, fractional, and project-based engagement option. So really interesting. You're probably not surprised by that. We work with a lot of small as well as mid-size companies. We have a few enterprise companies that are our clients as well, but those that need flexibility in how they resource their teams are coming to us all the time for that part-time, fractional, and project-based. Just to give you a little bit more history about our founders, 16 years ago, 3 women were coming out of caregiving responsibilities for their children. They were sending them off to school. They were credentialed. They were had multiple degrees. They had come out of a work experience, taken a break to raise their children, and they wanted to come back with flexibility at the core. They looked around, they didn't see any options, and they said, let's create that. 16 years later, we've got over 35,000 candidates in our database. So 35,000 people who say, yes, I need, or I want, or I need flexibility for a variety of reasons. Could be with where our founders were 16 years ago, that they needed that flexibility to care for their children, or could be now that they need that flexibility to care for a parent or a spouse, or maybe even themselves. They've acquired a disability and they need some flexibility in their weekly life. So the other aspect, and we'll get into this a little bit later, is just changing, shifting labor market and workforce. And then one more area before we jump off of our flex slide is how we work. We're a very people-centered organization, but we use technology to support that human-to-human work. I mentioned that experienced talent, and then we really are focused in that consultative work with our clients. Okay, the goal of today's webinar is for me to offer practical ways for you to navigate what is absolutely, I've been doing this for 20 years, the most turbulent labor market that I have seen in those 20 years. And that's through that pandemic, through the through the 2007, 2008 recession. And this is the most unpredictable labor market that most of us in this space have ever seen. But with that unpredictability, I believe you can use it to your association's advantage. So we will talk high level on the current labor market. We'll cover the workforce shifts that are specifically impacting your associations, how you can use flexible strategies to staff and resource your organization without losing your culture, without losing momentum for your growth, for your membership growth, for your revenue growth. And then how wouldn't be a session in 2026 if we didn't talk about AI and technology and how that is influencing the hiring process, both for job seekers as well as for our client partners. And I will give you throughout some practical frameworks that you can apply today, tomorrow, next week, as you begin whatever quarter you are starting your hiring in, that you can actually use those for your association. And then, of course, hopefully we'll have time for questions. Okay, so our first question, which is engagement for you, is what has been your greatest, or what is your greatest staffing challenge right now? I'd love to see it in the chat. And if you can manage that, Nicole, just kind of, tell me who is putting stuff in the chat. Is it succession planning or retirements? Is it managing workload with lean teams? 3, is it finding the right experience level when you've got your posts out? 4, is it budget uncertainty, hiring freezes within your organization? Or 5, is it too many resumes, but not enough true matches? You could say it's 1 through 5. If it is, great, we'll handle all that. But I'd love to hear from you in the chat what we're seeing.
So we are getting a lot of 2s and 4s.
Okay.
A sprinkle of 1s and 3s and 5s.
2s and 4s.
They're going fast. Yeah, I'd say mostly I'm getting a lot of 2, but it's usually
Okay.
2 and something, either 1s, 3s, 4s. It's a little bit of everything, it looks like.
Okay. Sounds great. All right. Well, good news. We'll cover most of these today. So we absolutely will talk about how you can use, again, this chaos and flexibility to your advantage when it comes to managing the workloads of lean teams. And for budget uncertainty, that is one of the beauties of using flexible work, is it can actually fit into your budget in a more accessible way. Sometimes those hires that come in a flexible capacity are coming not from your headcount budget, but they're coming from project budget, or they're coming in to your organization on a 20-hour-a-week assignment for, say, 6 months or 8 months. And as you get to know them, as your revenue builds, as their work produces impact, those 20 hours turn into 30. Those 30 hours turn into 40. You offer them a full-time job and they join your team, and they've moved with you, and you've moved with them to that point of full-time. It doesn't even always have to be that way. Sometimes those 20 hours are exactly what you need for the long haul. So thank you guys for sharing that in the chat. As I promised, we're going to talk very high level around the labor market. If you are here, you have some touch to hiring. You're either in HR, talent acquisition, both. You're doing both for your association. Maybe you're in administration and ops, and you are also doing that talent acquisition resourcing in HR. Or you're the executive director and you are you're over it all. Here is, and so you're already following these things. You're already looking at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, monthly for their jobs numbers and what they're talking about with unemployment. You're subscribed to the Wall Street Journal and you're following their labor perspective. Or you're even going to places like LinkedIn Workforce Reports and looking to see what they say around professional work. Here is the top level bullets. Hiring will remain cautious in 2026, despite relatively low unemployment. So there's some interesting labor dynamics going on with boomers retiring or moving towards a downshift in their career. For those that are mid-career, voluntary quits are way down. So you've probably heard the term job hugging. That's what that is. There are not as many voluntary quits because people are nervous. They're keeping the jobs that they have and they're not moving, which means that if you're hiring, it is harder to pull folks that are currently working. Okay. The resume volume per opening is significantly higher than we've really ever seen, but particularly in recent years. And you will probably tap that connected dot to generative AI. We'll get there. That's towards the end of our time together. But resume volume is very high. And of course, economic volatility continues to delay both full-time headcount. So that's that. How are we going to manage all this workload with a leaner team? That's what you said you're feeling. And it is, I want you to know all of these are happening at a macro level. We have white collar hiring slowdown. We've been in a white collar recession for 3 years. People want to think it's just last year. It's not. I've been watching these numbers since 2022. I've been experiencing them as a third-party recruiter since late 2022. The bottom started to fall out for full-time hiring in late 2022. And so you've got 23, 24, 25 entering into 26. It's two different kind of speeds of a job market here. So you put this hiring slowdown with this generative AI boom at the same time. And what do you get? More applicants, slower decisions, and higher stakes when it comes to the hiring. So that's kind of that reality that we're sitting in right now. When it comes to the labor market itself, we've been in a multi-generational labor market and workforce for many years, but we are starting to see that more experienced workers, this is boomers and yes, Gen X, are looking at this point to potentially either retire or more often than not to downshift to part-time or phase out their work. From a mid-career talent perspective, that's that Gen X and millennials. And I wrote this particularly this way because I don't love the different terms sometimes. I think it can just be where you are in your career and what you need at this time. For many of those of us who are in the mid-career, we're the ones that are job hugging, right? We've still got kids to put through college or trade schools or, just support in our basement. So we are holding on to those jobs. And for early career workers, actually, this group faces the toughest entry environment we've had. In fact, late last year, beginning of this year, I was looking at BLS numbers, and the highest levels of unemployment are actually for those that are computer science majors coming out of college. They're at 6.5% to 7% unemployment, which is super high. And so they're really facing tough entry into the workplace. The independent, fractional, and project-based work is actually rising across all age groups. You're probably like, well, duh, if I'm an early career person and I can't find a full-time job, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to take on fractional or part-time work because that's all I can find right now as I, begin my career. Or if I'm mid-career and I've been 25 or 30 years working and I just experienced a riff, I'm questioning whether I want to jump back into that like I've always done, whether I still need to climb that ladder, or can I hang my own shingle and become a subject matter expert in comms, marketing, financial operations, administration. Can I do that with two different clients and work 20 hours and 20 hours? Or can I do 30 hours with one client and then travel because life's too short? So it's not just generational, the boomers and Gen X that are looking for this flexibility of work. And I think as generative AI, those that I follow in the hiring space, there are questions around how will work look in 5 to 10 years, and will that work be radically different? So implications specifically for associations, the roles that you're opening up, they often skew more experienced, and yet those more experienced workers don't necessarily want to work in the ways that we've always worked. And the strong candidates want flexible arrangements. Look anywhere, all the big fives, your McKinseys, your BCGs, you read any labor report, Gartner, they're all going to say the same thing. 70 to 75% of white collar workers want flexibility in their work. They prefer hybrid. That's just the reality. So if you can offer that as an association, you can often use that again as a competitive advantage towards grabbing those candidates who are currently deciding on whether they want to go back into the office 5 days a week at their current firm. So you can use it to grab those candidates that are hugging their jobs right now. I want to describe a little bit. I know I talked earlier about the retirements. So many professionals, as I mentioned, many baby boomers are retiring later. Many for need, financial need, or just because they're healthy and they're living longer and they want to work for 50 years. They don't want to retire fully. They want to, do this work that they're passionate about late into their life. My father is 77 years old and he still gets up at 3:30 in the morning. I get my text message, "Good morning, sweetie," at 4:30 in the morning, and he heads into his job. He's a plumber. He heads into his job at NSA. I'm here in DC, every day, and he's 77 years old. And he always asks me, "When am I ready to retire?" And I say, "You're never going to retire, Dad. You love your work. You love your crew, who you're with." That is very often, whether you're in a blue collar, a trade, a white collar job, that ability to do meaningful work, to keep working, is not just something people necessarily need to do, but they want to do. And it's not just boomers, early Gen X, they're reassessing like, what's the pace? What's the scope that I've been in? Oh, I'm an executive director of communications. I don't even do communications anymore. I manage a team of 20 and I don't really do comms. I'm just managing people problems. And I got into this because I love storytelling and I don't do much storytelling anymore. So I think the pandemic did this, but I think just generally people are more open to saying like, does it have to be done the same way that it's always been done? And then again, those fewer hours, reduced scope. These are both these are statistics and information pulled both from BLS as well as AARP. As you saw, it's one of my past clients. So I do love to follow their insights on multi-generational workplaces. So I'm going to ask a second question of the group. And if you could manage this too, Nicole, just tell me what you're seeing in the chat. Have you experienced roll down shifts in your organization? They might look like this. A senior leader says, "I would like to reduce my scope. I would like to stop managing 4 teams." Or a long tenured employee says, "I would like to just be the storyteller. I don't want to manage a team anymore." Or someone has a planned or an unplanned retirement. So have any of you association leaders experienced that? Feel free to share in the chat.
So we're getting a lot of no's.
A lot of no's. Okay.
Yeah, I do see a yes. Somebody says, "I haven't experienced this yet. This will happen in the next few years."
Okay.
Here's a yep, that's part of what I'm working to fill now.
Uh-huh. Oh, this is great.
It's a mix, but mostly no.
Okay.
Longtime leader wants to glide into retirement, as in work
Yeah.
but not lead anymore.
Okay. Yep. I mean, again, and what, if you're not experiencing this now, my work over the last 20 years with associations says you will at some point because people love to stay in their association work for a long time. There's not as I've tended to see much less turnover than in some other like public companies or for-profit companies. They feel connected to your mission. So this downshifting and retirement, that is delayed but isn't full. I like to call, and this kind of world of who this is, I like to call this for associations the Tom problem. So I've talked to association leaders over the last 20 years, and I've come across hundreds of searches that start like this. We've got to replace Tom. Tom has been amazing in our organization. He's been there for 22 years. He came into the organization running compliance programs, and now he has assumed marketing, membership, events, and communications. And we don't know how we're going to replace Tom. But the interesting thing is, Tom is really irreplaceable. Tom, Tina, might be Tina, might be Tina, might be Tom. They are irreplaceable. They grew up with your organization. They grew with your organization. They acquired these departments and divisions and responsibilities because they were a really good people leader and they were really good in their strategy work, or they were really good in managing, being both that player coach. They have amazing institutional knowledge, right? And now they want to glide. I think somebody said slide into retirement. So they don't just want to end it. They want to ease out. But how you work either with a search partner or on your own to find that Tom replacement doesn't again have to be done the way it's always been done. So instead of looking for that one-to-one replacement of Tom, which I will tell you, you will not find. Tom and Tina are uniquely themselves. They've grown up with your organization. You won't find another one of them. You can redesign the work. So the first part of redesigning that work is shifting your mindset. So and asking a lot of good questions, right? If Tom wants to stay engaged, what is the most valuable work for him to continue in his 20 hours a week? And you have to be really specific because that 20 hours can creep to 30 and 30 can creep to 40. And then Tom's kind of annoyed that he's getting paid for 20, but he's doing 40 hours of work. So you have to be really specific about what is the most valuable work if Tom wants to continue to be engaged. If Tom is completely retiring, you have an opportunity to step back and look at the work, not his job title or not all of the divisions that he was managing. So you can ask yourself some really key critical questions. What work should remain full-time? Is there an opportunity? And I know many of you are like, yeah, we know succession planning. We're trying it, right? This is kind of succession planning plus, right? This is, okay, who on the team, and maybe it's not on his direct team, maybe it's someone in the larger organization, but who's ready to take up some of that current work that Tom's doing and step into that role? And if Tom is still willing to be on board, then maybe he can be a good mentor to that, continue to mentor that person into that work. And then there absolutely could be work that could be handled by a fractional or part-time subject matter expert. A subject matter expert in membership marketing, in revenue operations, in financial operations. So any area, communications, any of those kind of professional business buckets could be a consideration for a part-time subject matter expert or somebody that is fractional. Okay, so that's that mindset. Here's a bit more about the model. So this is instead of one impossible replacement, multiple rushed full-time hires. And I'll say the one impossible replacement, that bullet, and this third bullet, months of delayed work, that's because you've hit 3.5 months of an open job and you still haven't found the perfect replacement for Tom because you won't. And so you have then delayed work, you have overwhelmed teams, and your teams are already lean. So this starts to trickle out into the organization. So you have that one impossible replacement, then you multiple rush to hire, and or you have those months of delayed work. However, and this isn't, you don't have to do it just this way, but you could consider one full-time leader, one part-time or fractional expert, and then maybe one project-based or interim resource. And when I talk about project-based, those projects don't have to be 3 months or 6 months. I've seen associations bring folks on for an 18-month-long project because they knew that that digital transformation had a start time and a pretty lengthy go to get adoption, to get to the end point. Now, I will say that 18-month-long consultant that came in, that person ended up, because of shifts in organizations like we all have, that person ended up converting to a full-time headcount. But you don't have to think about it in just like, oh, we use project-based or interim resources only to cover, family medical leave, or only to cover maternity, paternity backfills. You can use it very specifically on time-bound projects. So this takes that mindset, right, of how we've always done it, and we've got to do it that way again. And it gives you a model, a different model to ask. It's not necessarily about doing more with less people. It's about doing more of the right work with the right people in the right way that works for you right now. And this is where I come back to this flexible work can be a competitive advantage for your association. It can reduce the risk during economic times, which we're in right now. It can decrease that overwhelmed feeling for your team, right? That burnout. It can provide really fast access to those specialized experts, those subject matter experts. And then it can allow for those professionals who have spent 25 years in your organization to downshift in a way that is like affirming for them and affirming for your organization, doesn't lose the institutional knowledge that is so important that no technology or system can replace. But it allows that to continue to happen just in a budget-friendly way and in a culture, organizational culture-friendly way. And then here's just a couple of use cases. Interim or transitional leadership is really popular. Those project-based or special programs, any area, right? Finance, compliance, comms, you name an area, there's probably a way to work it in a flexible way. And then also, as I mentioned, those time-bound or pilots, launches, transformations that have to have someone particularly managing that project and that work to success. So before we get a little bit too far, we're about halfway through, which is great. I'm about halfway through my presentation, so we're good. We're tracking right to have some time to have Q&A. But here is a staffing decision framework. So these are 4 questions that can help you make a strategic decision on how you want to handle your Tom problem. Is this need ongoing or time-bound? So is this particular work, not the title, not the job, not the backfill, but the work, is that a permanent responsibility in your organization to your organization, or is it more a defined project or a transition kind of work? Is the skill that is needed for this work very specialized, expert, or is it very broad? Number 3, how quickly do you need to have impact? So in the downshift or the exit, can you have some immediate ramifications that you need to have addressed? And then what would be that cost of waiting to bring someone on? That's the perfect backfill, right? That has risk to your members, that has risk to your staff, that has risk to your revenue, your bottom line, and also just momentum if you're in a build mode. All right. 3rd question. With a show of hands, how have you used flexible staffing models in your organization currently or in the past? It could be yes for project-based work, or yes for backfill, or yes to bring in that subject matter expert, or no, not yet, but I'd be interested. And it looks like somebody might want to share. And if somebody wants to unmute and share verbally, I would love that. Can you do that, Nicole? Might be Jess. More, maybe. Or she might have just been raising her hand.
I'm really bad at raising my hand, but I figured it out. Sorry.
No, you're great. Does anybody else want to come off mute and share about a successful use of flexible staffing? All right. Well, if you have, thank you. Thanks, Jess, for raising your hand. And if you want to share in the chat and that feels more comfortable, feel free to do that too.
Amy, would you like to come off mute and talk to us?
Sure. I've experienced this like seasonally for maternity leaves or leave of absence
Yep.
for a defined period of time.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. That's probably the most common way of using flexible staffing is to cover your maternity or paternity leaves to make sure that that work continues, not in total. And it's almost similar, right? When you bring on somebody for say a 3-month or a 5-month stint, it's never fully, just like Tom, it's never fully the work of the person who exited. You often have to take time to say, okay, somebody in the team's going to do this part, somebody else in the team's going to do this part, and here's that chunk of work that needs to be done by this contractor. So that's very, very common. Has anybody used it for that kind of subject matter expert? Maybe it's a digital transformation lead or a marketing strategist. You can just put no, or somebody can come off mute and say yes. Okay, we're going to keep going because we've got a little bit more. We're going to round out our time together before we get to Q&A with everyone's favorite topic of everything, on everything. If you have a webinar that you go to that doesn't have something around generative AI and automation, I mean, are you really doing a webinar at that point, right? As if the workplace dynamics weren't complicated enough, in walks generative AI to the party. And I love this cartoon from the Wall Street Journal because it captures this, what I would describe as like an escalating AI arms race between job seekers and employers. Every use case that one deploys, the other responds to or counters with another use case. And it can be really noisy, chaotic, hard to keep up with, keeps changing. And it is endemic now, right? I do want to say that AI and automation have been around for decades. So if you've used something like an applicant tracking system like Workday, or even a social network like LinkedIn, there is machine learning going on. There are algorithms processing the content and data about your candidates and about you and about their backgrounds and stack ranking them based on how they fit, particularly to your job descriptions. What's different about now is the speed, accessibility, and just general ubiquity of generative AI. And it's reached nearly every industry and every business function, including hiring. And the result, like, is just more. As you can see here, it's more resumes, more apps to use, more prompts to learn, more productivity to have, more disruption to how we do our work, and more complexity. And sometimes more is not better. So what I'd like to share a bit is twofold. One, how AI is showing up for job seekers, and two, how AI has been showing up for our association clients and clients in general. I will say this. We talked about the recession, the 3-year recession for white collar workforce. It is really hard out there to be a job seeker right now. It is very hard. There are job search timelines for many folks that are extending past 9 months. So you're past your severance. You're dipping into your savings. You are trying everything. And when desperation kicks in, that's when people maybe make decisions that we wouldn't have made if we were in a typical labor market and job market right now. So AI has made it much easier for candidates to polish their materials, right? On the flip, it's harder for you as an employer to look at a resume and say, oh, this looks like Bill's, and this looks like Sue's, and this looks like, Anita's. So all the resumes are starting to look the same, they're starting to sound the same. And what happens is the signals you get for that green light signal for a good candidate, those lessen because you can't just use resumes as as even your main starting point. So candidates are using generative AI for resume tailoring. They're using them to draft their cover letters. They are using them to prepare for interviews, which I absolutely encourage them to do. Give me a question, help me work on how I would answer this question. Now I say interview preparation. We don't want them using it real time in an interview. um, LinkedIn profile refinement and automated, sorry, application tools. I don't like these. I don't like LinkedIn Quick Apply. I don't like anything where you have to give less time to consideration and to really is that and you give, it's lessening that time and it's increasing, the ability for you to click because that is going to what? Increase your volume of resumes. So it's made it easier for everyone to do this work, but it has made it harder to actually distinguish that fit of candidate based on resume and even on LinkedIn profile. So my final question for the group is twofold. One, have you seen AI showing up with your candidate applications? This could be resume. This could be the volume you're seeing with a posted job. This could be in interviews. And two, how has AI or automation shown up inside your organization or your hiring process? And if anybody wants to share, because they're like, I don't really feel like typing all that out, happy to take you off mute. How are we looking, Nicole?
So let's see, we've got yes in resumes. Yes, what I see is not good and is an automatic round file. Yes in resumes, mainly drafting, not involved yet with hiring, resumes, cover letter. A lot of people are saying resumes.
Number one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Um, that is what we are hearing from every hiring manager. That's what we are also seeing as well. And I often get a lot of my former clients or folks referred from my former clients that are, mid to late career executives. And when we're talking, they're like, how do I use this tool and this technology in a way that is helpful and productive and isn't going to be detrimental, right? Um, so for and I actually removed a slide here because I was worried a little bit about time. But one of the things I'm going to go back one actually. One of the things that I had in here was just how to spot kind of AI gaming. Um, I remind you again that it is very difficult to be a job seeker right now. And so a lot of this is coming out of either the processes that we've developed, right? We're using applicant tracking systems and automated responses to the candidates. And they're like, well, if I need to hit the numbers of applications and I'm applying for 50 jobs a week, which I, again, do not recommend. But I'm doing a volume game. I'm going to use these tools to increase my volume and to customize it the best I can. When I talk to candidates, I always recommend you write yours first. You write the content first, and then have it look for those places where if you have SEO and the job description says search engine optimization, you better have search engine optimization also written. Don't expect those tools, those applicant tracking systems, to make the one-to-one connection. Be explicit. So if it says workforce planning and you have workforce development, write workforce development. It is it is semantic there. So I will say that is where networking and interview come into play for for spotting what could be AI gaming. For our association clients and many of our clients, for them, where AI has been adding the most hiring value is under high impact but low risk use cases. So this is things like resume parsing and tagging, which your applicant tracking systems already do. Interview scheduling and coordination. Think about your Calendlies, how helpful those are. Interview notes and summaries. There are specific hiring AI tools out there there are your general note takers, right? That is fine. And you can use those transcripts as just make sure they're being parsed appropriately. But there are tools out there as well that you can use that will tell you, like, hey, you had a couple hiring managers and some of the questions they were asking borderlined on HR inappropriate. So, or in this panel interview, it will give you insights into your hiring team, not just the candidate. So, hey, in this panel interview, panelist A spoke 70% of the time, and you had three other panelists on that barely got any questions in. So, from a usage, it can give you some really interesting intelligence on what is being asked and how you can train your hiring teams in asking better questions. And then it's super helpful in drafting job descriptions and outreach. Similar though, remember, if we're telling candidates that we don't want to see AI written, fully written resumes, be aware of that when you're writing your AI written job descriptions. So make sure that your association's culture and tone and way of work is expressed in the way that you've written it, in the word choice that you use. So let technology support the efficiency so people can focus on judgment and human connection. And that leads me into like where humans add the most hiring value for associations. So what technology, a bot, can't reliably assess, but you as a human can, is that mission alignment. So what's the motivation you hear from that person for the work that you're doing? What's the connection to your purpose or to the impacts that they're going to make on stakeholders across your organization, departments, board members? This is a big one in the world where we're in right now. Transferable experience shows that this particular candidate, it doesn't necessarily have exactly what you wrote on paper, but they bring something from wherever they're coming from that shows the right judgment, that shows creativity or innovation that you could use within your organization. How is that person going to contribute culturally to your association? How are they going to show up on your lean team that you all expressed at the beginning as one of your biggest challenges? Because when you're hiring at a firm of 10 to 30,000, it's very different when you make, not a great cultural ad. But if it's a team of 10 or 50 or 200, if you are relying on not human tools to make those final decisions and judgments, and you bring someone in that's going to kill that already, kill the collaboration, kill that, the momentum or motivation of that already strapped team, that can have real ripple ramifications. And then finally, as a human judgment and assessor, how's that person going to fit in long term? Where do you see them as growing and evolving in their work, sort of beyond that current role? So let the technology accelerate decisions, but let the people still make them. This is where we talk about like gut check and instinct and human judgment. Like that is still so critical. So let some of the tasks and the sort of collating of information, let that be a place where the AI or the technology can live, but let the humans make those decisions. Okay, we are winding it down and we're going to bring it kind of all together. We've covered a lot today. I want to recap just a little bit before we get into Q&A. What did we start off with? Who was available to work? And how do they want to work right now in 2026? How is the economic and labor market uncertainty, things like job hugging, things like downshifting, how are those kind of greater macro level moves affecting how you hire permanent hires or full-time hires, or how you open up to using flexible staffing as a tool? And then where is technology accelerating hiring, but increasing complexity, increasing the more and more, right? And how you can respond. So intentionally redesigning the work, using flexibility to bring on exactly the expertise you need right now and not burn out your already lean team staff. And then how you can, again, use that human judgment, the human to human connection time. How can you increase that by using technology to decrease your tasks? And if I were to leave you with anything, organizations that plan work intentionally, staff flexibly, use technology with purpose are better decisioned to adapt and thrive through all of this uncertainty. And now I'd love to hear any questions that might matter most to you. Please, I share a lot of tips and tricks and advice and guidance on LinkedIn, so I'm happy to connect with any and all of you. And then if you do have any, I guess, other more specific to your association questions, you can grab me via email.
If anybody would like to come off mute, feel free to use the raise hand. You can also put questions in the chat. I see we've got one now. Amy wants to know, is the association marketplace behind non-association marketplace as far as staffing, HR, etc.?
I think it depends on the size of your association. So I think part of it too is there is some, depending on the size, if you're more of a, mid or small association, you can be a little scrappier, right? You can be a little more nimble and flexible. You've had to be. What is going to be difficult is, you know, is technology the ability to afford certain technologies and things like that. But you can use that nimbleness to your advantage when you're looking to bring on either flexible staff or full-time staff. So I would say it's very much dependent on your size, and it's also dependent on your industry. Some industries, financial services, they're not looking to, there are some firms like they have to be careful about their use of technology. And even their use of independent workers. So a lot of times I caution hiring managers or leaders to make sure that if you're hiring independent consultants, those 1099s, that they really are that. So the majority of our contract or fractional talent are W-2. And why is that? Because it protects you more. You want to make sure that from a just from a worker's perspective, that they if they are 1099, that they can do the work when they can do the work and they can deliver it when they can deliver it. Because that's a different relationship, worker employee relationship. It's more of a corp to corp, more of a company to company relationship. So it's often safer to work through a firm for your fractional or your part-time needs, just so that it's clear and you've got protection. I don't know if that answered the question.
So Diana would like to know, do you have insight into how to help make part-time work successful? We've hired a few part-time positions and it's difficult to get that person motivated, involved, or care about the job.
Gosh. That's really interesting. I think sometimes what I have seen is people don't necessarily think about onboarding or think about how they communicate the projects that they need this person to do in the time frame that that person needs it done. Meaning that sometimes those part-time folks, what we've heard from on the candidate side is, uh, I've got 20 hours set aside and I'm not taking other clients, But the last 2 months, I've only received 10 hours a week of work, and I'm sort of grasping for what's the next project. So it's almost like an afterthought. Like I needed them for one thing, but now I'm trying to keep them on because they did something that's valuable. I will say overall, if y- y- you might have, it might be the wrong person, it might be the wrong hire. So, regardless of whether they're part-time or full-time, they just might not be the right hire for that work. So, but being intentional about how you onboard your part-time part-time workers, your fractional workers, that also needs intentionality into how you bring them into your organization. And so often we hear, I don't have time to like onboard them. And it's like, well, then they're not going to get, if you're having them do comms work or marketing work or membership work, then it might take them longer to understand like the tone and the way that you talk to your members. And then it's just going to delay that deliverable. It's going to, you're going to have to do a ton of revisions. They're going to have to do a ton of revisions. So spend time upfront onboarding them appropriately, like you would a full-time hire. It will absolutely be worth your time. And sometimes it's the wrong hire.
Jess says, could you please share the slide on thinking about staffing differently? She says it was great and I didn't get to finish taking notes on it.
Oh yeah, let me just go back. Gotta go back. Is it this one or this one? Redesign. There's a mindset and a model shift. And I'm happy to provide this too. So you can have the whole deck. Was this the one you wanted, Jess?
She says yes.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so it's about 1:56, so I think we have a little bit more time for questions if anybody else has any specific questions. These were great. And again, you might like hang up and go, I didn't ask about X. Feel free to again message me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah. And I had a lot of fun putting this together. So thank you, Nicole.